Hello, friends, and welcome. I think this is our 97th video on the second part of the rays and the initiations. So we have finished discussing initiation number 4. It was a very deep section, and he discusses the whole matter in a way that he doesn't anyplace else. And in reviewing or looking ahead to Initiation 5, in which there are some maybe 14 pages here, I think the same is the case. If we really want to look at this in great detail, we will have to gather all that he has said about the initiations. And we do know that this kind of book, this kind of work is advanced, and that we will not be learning these things overnight. Yet, if we do study carefully and over the years, and I would suspect even into our next incarnations, all of this which the Tibetan has given us will begin to become well integrated into our approach to life. So we will have to be patient, and we will have to apply what we can, and we will have to realize that there will definitely be much that is written which will presently escape our understanding. But okay, that's just factual. That's just the way it is. Now here we begin at page 703, and we're working on this rendition, this explanation of the fifth initiation, the initiation of mastership, the rank which Master DK holds at the least. Some feel he necessarily has moved on to Chohanship. It may be the case, but at least we know he is a master of the wisdom. We don't know what path he will be treading on the way of high revolution, but since he is such an expert in the energies, perhaps the ray path would be a possibility. That's just a suggestion, not backed by certainty of knowledge. So let's start reading together. As we undertake the consideration of the next initiation, you will find that 3 factors will emerge in a new light in your consciousness. That they are factors related to past experience, and yet which have reference to experiences which lie far ahead of you upon the path, will also be inferred from what I say. These will not necessarily meet with your real understanding. In other words, what we consider to be our understanding is relatively superficial to the depth of understanding which will come later. But, you know, the past is prologue to the future, and there are many things we pass through which on a lower turn of the spiral anticipate other possibilities that we will be passing through. The progress is, well, it's not infinite in any one solar system because, or any one universe, at least according to my present thought, I don't think any specific universe can be infinite, but it is involving a tremendous lengths, periods of time, tremendous cycles, and in so many ways we've just made the turn, and we are just beginning on this path of true self-consciousness, true group consciousness, true consciousness within the one and as the one. Okay. So the factor of blindness leading to revelation, these are the three factors which are going to emerge as we discuss this. The factor of will producing synthesis, the real higher function of the will. The factor of purpose externalizing itself through the plan. And that purpose to me is always a relationship, an arrangement of energy factors which are archetypal to any system and which have to work out in what I call the mosaic worlds, the lower worlds, the worlds of apparent parts and pieces, where there's a kind of a seamless relationship in the archetypal worlds of purpose. The first real world of purpose, as far as we can be concerned, I believe, is the world of the monad. So we are blind, relatively. We see only a certain circumscribed range of possibility, but ever the ring past naught will grow and the blindness will gradually lift, leading to the discovery that with respect to still greater revelations, we are still blind. And the factor of the true nature of the divine will producing synthesis, the synthesis which is, and not the unity which has to be created. That particular quote is very important. And here is that quotation that I refer to so often, maybe not in the exactly correct words, but these are the correct words. All I can say is that synthesis is, whilst unity is achieved, and is the reward of action and effort. So a special kind of relationship provides what we call unity. But underlying that relationship, or any relationship, is the factor of synthesis. And I think this is wholeness, oneness, identicality, there are many ways to describe it, but it all hangs together forever. All right, so these are the three factors. Three factors will emerge in a new light. Now, we've probably considered these things to a degree, but when we're considering the fifth initiation, which is, let's just say well ahead of us, even though many initiates of the fifth degree have to be produced in order to make the divine plan express in a timely manner, because there is that time-space schedule of our planetary logos. There will be a creating of many fifth degree initiates for that purpose, as far ahead as it does seem for students like ourselves. But remember how rapidly it is possible to take some of these initiations, 4 and 5 in the same life, or 2, 3, and 4 in the same life. And I've sometimes said, when you study the life of Milarepa, who seemed to be beginning the narrative story when he was around the second degree, it seems that he moved so fast, this yogi saint of Tibet, that he took the fifth initiation in that life as well, which would be, really extraordinary, considering, let's just say, the way we are inclined to move. Remember that the Tibetan has rather accused us of sloth. He says it's the sin of the average initiate we don't move rapidly enough. The minute we start getting into the fifth kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls, we are, in a way, on the path of initiation. And, well, DK thinks perhaps we are dragging our feet compared to our possibilities. So anyway, about these three, these are all implicit in this new initiatory experience, but they should be approached by you with as much use of the intuition as you can employ, and to have a different perspective upon them, and one that is truer and based upon straight knowledge and not just our hypotheses and suppositions which are subject to error. Straight knowledge is not subject to error. Your effort will have to be that you endeavor to think as if you had taken the higher initiations. There's no presumption in this. It is simply a technique. This is, let's call this, whoa, that's not going to be it. Sorry. I want to get my little purple bracket there so we can know where we are. So it's an extension, a considerable extension of the as-if method. You have to bear in mind that each initiation enables the initiate to see ahead a little further. There is all of us are circumscribed emanations. Even compared to absolute infinity, even the universal logos is a circumscribed emanation. So let's see what I have here. We are all circumscribed emanations. So, and with each initiation, we widen the diameter, if I may call it that, of our circumscription. We can be very tiny indeed. Our circumscription can limit us practically to being a subatomic particle. Well, not really, of course. We retain our monadship, but the extension of what we are on the higher planes into more and more circumscribed consciousness is the way of emanation. I do think, that emanation theory is built into Buddhism, and if you see the old tankas, you do see that appears to be the case. And but no matter how circumscribed we are here, and no matter how small our range of consciousness and of possibility, essentially we are much, much wider than that in our pre-emanatory stage of being the universal logos. And I'm going to say that here in our... This is strange. Okay. No. Oh, goodness. I'm having a little trouble here. Right. Let's try that, huh? In our pre-emanatory stage, we are the universal logos, and infinitely more, really. It's such a contradiction that our nature is that of absolute infinity, or the absolute in absoluteness, as I sometimes call it, and yet we also experience this great limitation of emanative circumscription. Let's just say, however, sorry for this. However, we must always experience cyclically the limitation of emanative, I'll call it that, emanative circumscription, which limits our powers and limits our consciousness and does seem to be the way that we do things. Anyway, we can see a little further ahead, always, where revelation is always a constant factor in human experience. We're going to see more and more. We're going to see that which already is and which is revealed, but of which we are unaware. The whole of life is revelation. Well, I think when we're living a life which is focused on consciousness above all, that this is true. The whole of life is revelation. The evolutionary process is, in relation to consciousness, a process of leading the blind out of darkened areas of consciousness into greater light, and therefore into vaster vision. So we are, what are we doing really? What is this? I think it's very strange. I seem to be getting a whole page there when I don't really want it. Okay. But anyway, into ever vaster vision, we are regaining our original scope of consciousness through what I call emanative retraction, negating emanative circumscription. You know, we are so limited at first in our consciousness and in our abilities, progressively more limited, and gradually we undo those limitations and we return to the high perspective from which we began our descent. What is descent? It's not really up and down, right? Descent is a process of circumscription, and ascent is a process of shattering the circumscribed rings pass not. It's more like consolidation and then expansion, but not really up and down, of course. We realize that we portray things in that up and down manner because sometimes they're easier to understand that way for us, but it's not true. As you know, this particular initiation, the fifth, has been called the resurrection by the Christian world. Now, DK explains to us that that is not really the case, and it is a function of the humanity of that period, or even of our period, to understand ascension and what it means really to be lifted, to be elevated into higher vibratory levels. So this would be emphasizing that aspect in the experience of the initiate, which leads to revelation. He is rising out of the ocean of matter into the clear light of day, and when you see something like the light of day, the clear light of day is scorpionic and Buddhic. And remember that in the system of initiations, the sequence of them, when we get to Scorpio, after the Libran contemplation, it is scorpionic illumination. So Scorpio is, its light is the light of day, and Scorpio rules for us the Buddhic plane, the plane of the intuition. So we're rising out of the 21 lower subplanes into the etheric body of the planetary logos and of the solar logos, and it feels like such a rising that we call it the resurrection. But we're not really at the very height of the cosmic physical plane by any means. It's just a relief from the kind of slavery we have been subject to for millions of years in the dense physical body of the planetary logos and the solar logos. Okay, the thought of revelation then can be seen also in the Christian teaching anent the Ascension, an initiation which has no factual existence and should not be called initiation, but later, he does later, he tells us that the sixth initiation is the Ascension. He doesn't name it that, he names it the Great Decision, but of course what we find is it lifts us to the level of Chohanship and onto the monadic plane, and everything that the monad has sent forth during that long pilgrimage can be retracted into its monadic way of life. You have, therefore, the following sequence connected with the fourth and fifth initiations. You see, DK is helping clarify our terminology. It's so easy to think that what is written in the Bible and in the commentary on it is somehow written in stone, but it just simply reflects the stage of consciousness and intelligence of the writers, which was not necessarily that of a high initiate, or the highest type of initiate, or let's say of a master. So here are the following sequence is connected with the fourth and fifth initiation. Number one, renunciation producing crucifixion. Okay, so that is, these terms are well known, and this is the fourth initiation. Ascension, or a complete rising out of or mounting higher. Well, we can rise out of the 21 lower subplanes. We can rise out of the spiritual triad and into the monad. We can rise out of the cosmic physical plane and into the cosmic astral plane, not to return during the duration of any one particular solar system. Later there may be return for the purposes of service, And then revelation, giving vision, the reward of the two above stages. But let's just say this ascension can have at least 3 applications from the 21, from the higher mental plane to the Buddhic plane, from the atmic plane to the monadic plane, and from the logoic plane to the cosmic astral plane. So it's not so much the name of initiation as the description of a kind of elevatory process that is experienced when making these transitions. And every time there is an ascension, there's going to be a revelation. I think we can put that down. Every time there is an ascension, there will be a revelation. And we probably, experienced in our own lives right now certain minor revelations as we've studied esotericism and tried to lead the meditative life. Some of these terms can be applied across the board and do not have to be fixated on any one initiation. Okay, Christian theologians have made 3 distinct episodes out of these 2 initiations, but this in no way mattered, as the initiate in the West soon learns. That's interesting. I suppose what has happened here is crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension, I suppose. Something like that. This initiate of the West knows that the whole series of initiations, with their causes, their effects, and their resultant intentions, are only a sequence of processes leading from one to another. Let's just say that all of these processes are related, and one follows upon another. So we don't get too concrete-minded about it and sort of fix it in stone as if it were a rigid stage. It's really one big process with different stages. A corresponding sequence can be seen in the unfoldment of the consciousness of the human being from infancy to full maturity. It's a good analogy, right? I mean, when we think of our life, there's more of a continuity, and we do not isolate these stages as if they were completely separate from one another. One leads to the other. Each unfoldment is part of a series of revelations as his vision of life and his capacity to experience develops. So we have here the analogy of growth as a human being compared to passage through various initiations. And DK has referred in the ancient language to the young man, to the rich young man, to the mature, full member of the hierarchy. Each one of us has a mystical or sacred age, depending upon our initiatory status. Once he was talking about being a young man when certain things happened to him, and he referred, I think, to the level of his soul development. Probably he was an initiate of the 2nd degree, the rich young man being the initiate of the 3rd degree, the babe in Christ, initiate of the 1st degree, the little children, initiates of the 2nd degree. So this use of language helps us understand something of the relativity of growth and its continuity. Okay, so the unfoldment of consciousness of the human being from infancy to full maturity, and you kind of wonder, though, whether in the spiritual world, perhaps we avoid going through that incapacitation that happens in the world of form to those who have the old form. They lose their faculties, and I don't think it is the case with someone who is progressing into full maturity and hierarchy in the spiritual world. Okay, so his vision of life and his capacity to experience does develop. This is true of all men, from the most primitive to the advanced initiate. The difference is consisting in that which each brings to the experience as the result of his past effort. Experiences can be similar, but we get something different out of them and can learn from them in different ways depending upon our point in consciousness. So what does he bring to any experience? What is his point in consciousness? And the quality of the vehicle through which the consciousness is developing. So I think we can safely say that the experience may be similar, but what is extracted from the experience will differ according to the what we call it, age of the soul, or which is the degree of profitable experience which the soul has had. Two people can have similar number of incarnations, and yet one will be of a higher soul age than the other, because that one was able to learn more and benefit more from the experiences presented. So with the initiate disciple, and we are here in this world of initiation when we discuss the developments in this book anyway, with the initiate disciple, this is also the case. He enters consciously into each experience, and they are integral parts of his intention. So once again, we simply have to say we are treading the conscious way. And we're not blundering forward, hopefully, but the teaching tells us what to anticipate, and we bring to all experiences upon the path the fullness of our abilities so as to take complete advantage of that which we encounter. It's a long trip in terms of the relativity of time, and if you think about it, so many of us have, in terms of the human kingdom, passed through the majority of our human incarnations and now hover on the edge of the fifth kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls. So we are being trained for transition. This all, what did I do? Okay, yeah. This all is training for transition into the next kingdom of nature. Well, I'll just say kingdom. But it still will require of us patience and circumspection, caution. Everything we do as we progress in our abilities counts and has a greater effect on ourselves and on those around us than when we were just coming up in a less conscious state. So much caution is required as we attempt to fulfill that which Master Decay has given us. And he has given us amazing possibilities. Now, moving on to the next paragraph. Having renounced the three worlds, that of course occurs at the time of the, sorry for sirens in the background. Here in Phoenix it's quite warm, and I do have to have the window open here. So having renounced the three worlds as we do at the fourth initiation, and having returned back from a contact of great importance and interest to those in the three worlds and with all that is familiar in them, the initiate suddenly realizes that he has indeed been liberated, that he is indeed free, that he has been raised out of darkness and is now free in a new world of experiences. Perhaps, the name of this initiation is the revelation. It has everything to do with light. It's related to Leo, to the sun, to a general illumination and a revelation of that which lies ahead on the way of higher evolution. Let's see, wait a second, I think I better do this right. Revelation. Okay. He knows that he has climbed to the mountaintop, really the top of the human kingdom. He is the archetypal man. He is a man, but the Chohans are no longer considered to be men. The Chohans of the 6th degree, they are considered to be lights which carry out the will of God and which move in Shambhala. This is different from the 5th degree master. Okay, he knows that he has climbed to the mountaintop or has ascended to the Buddhic plane. Now here we're talking about ascension in a slightly lower grade than DK has earlier when he says that the 6th initiation is the true ascension out of the 5 Brahmic worlds of the cosmic physical plane, and out of those worlds into which the monad on the 6th or the 2nd plane has projected itself in the great pilgrimage. He knows that he has climbed to the mountaintop or has ascended to the Buddhic plane, from which plane he must permanently work, and not just occasionally, as has been his method hitherto. So a master, he's telling us, a master has affiliation with the 5th or Atmic plane, but he works on the Buddhic plane, he seems to be telling us. Though there is affiliation with the Atmic plane, the master of the wisdom, master of the wisdom. Well, we should have, that should definitely be there. MOTW, MOW, that's how we did it. Okay. The master of wisdom, of the wisdom, works solidly and with continuity from the Buddhic plane. Now, people like ourselves, maybe we only rarely really touch the Buddhic plane, and especially as it has something to do with our astral level and stimulates it in a certain way. And even an initiate of the 3rd degree is learning how to work on the Buddhic plane, but now we have an initiate of the 5th degree. As a 4th degree initiate, he's been liberated onto the Buddhic plane, and he begins his continuity of expression. And as a master, permanently work, and not just occasionally. And the solar angels, of course, we are told that they are working on the Buddhic plane. Let's see if I can. This is not easy. Okay. I think what I have to do, I want to move this forward. Yeah. AAB diagrams. Yeah. And here we are. And let's see how this looks. Yeah. Okay, we can move it this way. This way, this way. Okay. Okay. So here we have the different qualities that we learn to express on these different planes, and at the 4th initiation we really do move into Buddhic expression, and maybe not into the complete and pure intuition just yet. There's other things to learn. There's Alice Bailey. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. Now, I'm trying to find the right way to do this. Yeah. All right. That's good. That's good. Okay. Very good. So this is the first ascension. The first ascension out of the dense physical body, which even includes the causal body, the dense physical body of the solar logos. And it must be a great relief and a great new possibility of freedom towards which we are all now working and one day will achieve. All right, let's go on. He can work through a physical body with its subtler sheaths or not, as he sees fit. Now, Master Decay worked through a body born in the usual way, and he was a master. But the Maya Virupa is also a possibility, and that's the will-created body created through the power of Kriya Shakti. Now, here we have, let's see, that's not so good, this one. And what I wanted to show was, well, so I wanted to. But here is the Kriya Shakti, which is the power of the monad, and by this time we realize that there's a much more direct line with the monad, and the monad's power coming through Virgo. It's called the materializing ideal, and that which is presented as a Maya Virupa is indeed an ideal form, and very often the form we are told in which the master took the fifth initiation. Okay, so all of these things, they do lie ahead, but we are given at least, thank goodness, an accurate picture of what will unfold, and no glamorous and misleading, inflationary picture, which will waste our time. So at the fourth degree, the initiate, the arhat, can employ a Maya Virupa, but at the fifth degree, it's often a practice that is done. Either that or one takes over the body of one of one's disciples who has been prepared. I think that was the case with Apollonius Jesus and Apollonius of Tyana. And I think it was the case with the Buddha and Gautama, and certainly was the case with the Christ and the Master Jesus. So we don't know which way, probably it has much to do with our karma, which way we choose to manifest at the fifth initiation. We can preserve the physical body if we will, or we can send forth a materializing ideal, a will-created body relating to the energies of the sign Virgo, and we know that that is a sign of manifestation. Okay, so this master, he realizes that he, as an individual, no longer needs a physical body or an astral consciousness, and the mind is only a service instrument. The body in which he now functions is a body of light, which has its own type of substance and, I believe, related to the etheric body. And in a treatise on cosmic fire, there is a section there around 160 or so where we deal with the body of light. And let's see if I can, I don't know whether I can find that right now, but let's see. Treatise on cosmic fire, I think around page 168 or thereabouts. I think it's even earlier, perhaps. Let's see if I can find this. It's here, very definitely. Body of light. Huh. Well, that's not exactly the place, but it is in a treatise on cosmic fire. And let's just see if I look in the AAB diagrams, if I find this body of light, let's see. It's also called by other names. Body of light, no items match. Oh, it's not AAB diagrams, it's AAB extracts. So let's see. All right, let's try this again. Light body. Stars of the light body. I think, well, we'll have to look somewhere in the early 160s is my impression. Let's just see, 162. Sometimes one gets caught in these things, you know. It's here. The nature of the centers. But what is it called? So in fact, it's called the body of fire. The centers, therefore, when functioning properly, form the body of fire, which eventually is all that is left, okay, to first to the man of the three worlds and later to the monad. This body of fire is the body incorruptible or indestructible, spoken of by St. Paul, and is the product of evolution, of the perfect blending of the three fires which ultimately destroy the form. When the form is destroyed, there is left this intangible spiritual body of fire, one pure flame, distinguished by 7 brilliant centers of intenser burning. The electric fire is the result of bringing together of the two poles and demonstrates in the moment of complete at-one-ment the occult truth of the words, our God is a consuming fire. That's the one, 166 and 167. And I think that's what Master DK is referring to in that which we have been examining. Okay. Right, he doesn't need that. There's just a body of light which has its own substance. So related to the etheric body, and let's call it also the, we'll call it the body of fire, and the body incorruptible, the body of flame. All these things. So maybe you'll remember, maybe I'll remember, page 166 and 167 of a treatise on cosmic fire. And when the destruction occurs at the fourth initiation, this is what remains to the individual. The master, however, can build a body through which he can approach his incoming disciples and those who have not taken the higher initiations, because he needs some kind of more tangible vehicle which can be registered by the disciples in their greater state of tangibility. Though, as I say, with Master DK, the story is that he was still using, at that time, we don't know now, but he was still using that body in which he actually took the fifth initiation in the year 1875, the year of the founding of the Theosophical Society, and that whole coming forth of the Theosophical presentation. He will normally build this body in semblance of the human form, doing so instantaneously and by an act of will when required. This is very interesting. And this is the, this we call, you know, as I've said, the Maya Virupa, and it's materializing ideal, and I think it's built by the power of Kriya Shakti. And I think we can tell here, if we go here, yeah, Kriya Shakti. I guess They kept that S as a lowercase. So all of this is possible, and it is the way we continue our service and reach out towards those that our condition has transcended. So we densify in order to communicate. The majority of the masters who are definitely working with humanity either preserve the old body they took, in which they took the fifth initiation. Now this would be Master Decay, right? Or else they build the Maya Varupa, or body of Maya. In other words, an etherically formed body which gathers around itself the dense physical atoms, Maya of physical substance. So first it's an etheric process, which then gathers atoms of dense substance. This body will appear in the original form in which they took initiation. Now, probably the fifth initiation. This I personally did. Notice he does, even though an advanced personality, completely soul infused, and even without a causal body per se, he refers to an act of his as a personal act. This I personally did in reference to the first case, keeping the old body, right? That is, preserving the body in which I took initiation. So preserving that body in which he took initiation from 1875, and began to work on the gathering of his ashram. This Master K.H. did in creating a body which was made in the form in which he took the fifth initiation. We don't know when that was, but obviously it was before Master DK took the fifth initiation. So obviously before Master DK took the fifth initiation. I have a friend who said that there was a time when Master KH went away and left his students in the care of Master Moria with greater or lesser success. And this friend said that Master KH was going away to take the sixth initiation of Chohanship. We don't really know how long Master KH has been a Chohan, but we do know that Master Moria, who is now a Chohan, certainly was not a Chohan when he was Akbar the Great. And that was 400 years ago, something like that. He was one of the great Mughal emperors of India. So it hasn't been all that long. And sometimes when you look at Akbar and his actions, you wonder, this may have been an initiative of the fourth degree, but was he a master, really? So there's certain rapid transitions that seem to be made by some of these masters. Again, we don't know when Master Jesus took Chohanship. We do know that he, working, I think, through the body of Apollonius of Tyana, took the fifth degree, but the Chohanship is still uncertain in our minds, I think, when that did occur. Maybe it's none of our business, but one day we will learn that. And then you look back on the one who is now the Mahachohan, the Master R. And as Francis Bacon, I mean, as Roger Bacon, he certainly seemed to be an initiative of the third degree minimally. As Francis Bacon, maybe an initiative of the fourth degree. Was he a master? I don't know. He appears later as a master as the Count de Saint-Germain. But he did, become the Mahachohan at some point, I think in the 20th century, around the year 1925, when all of the, or many of the ashrams moved to the Buddhic plains. So in terms of our modern hierarchy, working with modern humanity, their ascension to higher offices of responsibility is relatively recent in terms of the way we calculate years. And, you know, like I say, we have really lived through the majority of our human incarnations in the fourth kingdom. And I once kind of calculated this out, and I figured maybe about 99% of them, or maybe a bit more, 99 point something, the number of incarnations through which we have lived. So entering fully into the fifth kingdom of nature will be, I think, for us an imminent event. And then the possibilities of service will be expanded tremendously. We have to be grateful when we understand the kind of opportunity which Sanat Kumara, the Christ, Master K.H., and from them through Master D.K., the kind of opportunity offered to us. Excuse me. It may interest you to know that the Christ has not yet decided what type of physical vehicle he will employ. That doesn't mean he doesn't have one, right? Should he take physical form, it seems that, well, at least Leadbeater said he had a kind of Irish body. I mean, we have to see, you know, does that really work out? But anyway, what type of physical vehicle he would employ, should he take physical form, I imagine there's a lot of flexibility, you know. A Maya Virupa can be created and recreated according to the need and what will best serve humanity at the time. Should he take physical form and work definitely upon the physical plane? But this was written, let us remember, this was written before the Christ really had decided, and he did in the 1940s, around 1945. And it was that decision, we are told, you know, that really sacrificial decision, which allowed the giving of the third stanza of the Great Invocation to be presented to humanity. When he had decided on the basis of sacrifice that he would reappear physically, the Great Invocation could be given to humanity. Now, the implications of all that, we cannot know. I'm sure it involves things which are far beyond our ken, but in every case, sacrifice makes for greater possibility. And we have to realize that this is the case. I've often repeated it. Master Mori is saying, when have you ever become less through sacrifice? It causes you to reflect, doesn't it? And of course, the moreness achieved through sacrifice is an internal, psychological, spiritual moreness. We may give up certain outer things, but in terms of the building of our qualities, those qualities are greatly enhanced through sacrifice, and maybe some of us have proven that that is the case. I'm recalling Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, and I do believe a very kind of high soul offers himself as a sacrifice to the guillotine in order to save others. And it's in the novel by Bulwer Lytton called Zanoni. The same kind of thing happens there. the realization that through sacrifice we ascend, even though at first it appears to be loss, where we have to turn our system of values around entirely, don't we? Okay, he waits to see what nation or group of nations, even group of nations, like Scandinavia or European Union, who knows, or we just don't know. But I do say that the presence of the United Nations, very powerful presence in New York, and the development of the second ray soul of New York, and the movement of the government of the United States to New York, which DK predicts, and the second ray soul of the United States, all that seems to point in the direction of the United States, at least as a contender for that possibility of being the headquarters of the Christs. He waits to see what nation or group of nations do the most work, and the most convincing work in preparation for his reappearance. We should never drop this. This is our commitment, forgetting the things which lie behind. I will strive towards my higher spiritual possibilities. I dedicate myself anew to the service of the coming one, and will do all I can to prepare men's minds and hearts for that event. I have no other life intention. Well, that's such a strong commitment, and I suppose whatever individuals or groups of individuals make that commitment and adhere to it, they could be rewarded in that sense by having prepared the way for the headquarters of the Christ. He will not, however, it says, take a Jewish body as he did before, for the Jews have forfeited that privilege, and if they had recognized him, maybe it would have been a Jewish body, and that would mean creating a Maiva Rupa of whatever kind is needed. Sometimes we think that the Maiva Rupa is just one thing, and once it's been created, that's it, but such a high soul and seventh degree Chohan as the Christ, I suppose, can create a Maiva Rupa of whatever nature according to the demand of the service which he wishes to express. The Messiah for whom they wait will be one of Christ's senior disciples, and it will not be as originally intended, the Christ as originally intended. So that is the result of the rejection of the Christ. And of course, if there had not been a rejection, there would have been a bridge between the third ray of the Jews and the second ray of the and of the previous solar system, and the second ray of the Christ and the present solar system. That kind of bridge could have been made. Now it'll have to be made in a different way. And somewhere it says, it may be coming up here, that it very likely to be the Master Jesus who is the Messiah. Now, with some of these great masters and now Chohans, you get the feeling that they really are from the previous solar system. In the calculations I've made, Master Jesus, Master Moria, maybe the Mahachohan, not sure. The Buddha, even, in whom the seeds of the previous solar system ripened, all of these could have been those who were individualized in the previous solar system. The Christ, we know, was individualized in this solar system, and it's my impression that the Master DK and Master KH, and I don't know, maybe, I think Master Jupiter, previous solar system, because he's said to be the oldest of the masters, whatever that means. Maybe his point of origin was quite ancient in that previous solar system. But Master KH, Master DK, some of the others, maybe they were individualized in this solar system and on the moon chain and not on the earth chain as was the Christ. So the Christ position is unique. He seems in his individualization to have followed many whom he now leads. A friend of mine said he had a good solar angel. It's kind of a joke in a way, but we're left to have our free choice here. And what we do with that free choice determines where we stand. So one of Christ's senior disciples, but not as originally intended the Christ. So again, maybe a Jewish body was going to be taken, and as I said, the reason for that, I think, is the very successful bridging possibility. Symbolically, the Jews represent, from the point of view of the hierarchy, that from which the masters, all of the masters of the wisdom and lords of compassion emerge. They emerge out of that state that the Jewish consciousness in general may represent, and that's certainly not all, because, as DK said, the Jews can provide, even now, something that might be called the spiritual aristocracy of humanity. Those are words he used. But emerging from materialism, cruelty, which goes along, with mental pride and separativeness, and a spiritual conservatism, obviously hanging on to old things and being backward looking, so that today they live in the Old Testament times and are under the domination of the separative, selfish, lower concrete mind. And, the danger of making the concrete mind a sphere unto itself may be their danger. So the danger of making the lower concrete mind a sphere unto itself may present for some of the modern Jews a special danger, because it's possible to develop the concrete mind, DK tells us, to extraordinary levels along a kind of a Davic line, and it's along the line of Mahat, and to us it's inconceivable how far that mind can be developed along those lines, even though now the emphasis is supposed to be on the energy of love. And I might just say that, given the astrological signs of the Jewish group, Capricorn is the outer sign, and it has a lot to do with rays 1, 3, and 7, but Virgo is the inner sign, it has to do with rays 2 and 6. So the possibility that the Virgo energies can take over and bring in the love energies, this is indeed a possibility. I pressed something and suddenly suddenly I was pages and pages ahead. Okay, but their opportunity will come again, and they may change all this when the fires of suffering at last succeed in purifying them and burning away their ancient crystallizations. We think about Vulcan and the power to crystallize on the first ray, because the soul of Judea is the first ray. But we also think about the great fire that can purify, thus liberating them to the extent that they can recognize their Messiah, who will not, however, be the world Messiah. Whoop, there we go again. Don't know how I do that. So I'll just say this. Is it Master Jesus? That's the question, because he does have a tremendous relationship with the Jewish group as Joshua the son of Nun, and as Jeshua the priest Jeshua, and Joshua the high priest. He has, and of course as Yeshua, always with a J, interestingly enough, and that J for us is a 10, and it's the Yod of flame. Our letter J is related to the Hebrew Yod, and out of the Yod, which are flames, all of these different letters can be created. The Jews need humility more than any other nation, an adjusted sense of right proportion, taking away of the egotistic or egoistic perspective, wearing away irritation through cosmic perception. As Master Moria says, these former Jews, King Solomon, Jesus, and so forth, they've learned these lessons and are in a position to help. By humility, they may learn something of value as well as the needed sense of proportion, right? An adjusted sense of right proportion. So, what's really important, what's big, what's little, true values, you might say. They are dear to the heart of the Christ, for in the performance of his greatest work thus far, we might say, he chose a Jewish body, as I say, to help bridge, I think, the third and second ray, but their materialism and their repudiation. Okay. I don't know how I keep on running forward here. Their materialism and their repudiation of spiritual opportunity has negated his use of their racial type. Again, it just wouldn't be accepted in the right way. It would provide too great a handicap. The probability that the Master Jesus will assume under instruction from the Christ, the probability is that Master Jesus will assume the role of the Messiah for the Jews. I mean, there is the world Messiah, who is the Christ, and then there are leaders and saviors of the various groups. And the Master Jesus, so connected with the Christian church, in a way the head of the whole Christian church, will be presenting himself to Judaism as the Messiah. And even now you can feel that this is happening. There are groups that really, in the Jewish groups, that really accept Jesus, Jews for Jesus, for instance, and those who somehow put him in a very, very high place. And when you think about the problems that exist between Islam, Judaism, especially Orthodox Judaism, and fundamental Christianity, Master Jesus has a lot on his hands and somehow must help those for whom the sixth ray is a dominating energy, and an energy which, being the energy of undue emphasis, the ray of undue emphasis, is standing in the way of seeing things with true proportion, which would bring humility and right treatment of each other, respect, right human relations, and so lead into the great second ray. So there's a lot of work to do during this age of universality, the Aquarian age. When we think about what has to be done, the ideas are not so complex, but the doing of them is difficult. Excuse me. The Master, standing symbolically upon the Mount of Ascension, I guess there are a number of those mounts, but at least one is on the Buddhic plane, is equipped with a full realization of the past, with a sound appreciation of what he has to offer in the service of humanity, and with a sense of expectancy. Well, I recall that it is the ability of the solar angel supervising a man to see ahead 5 lives, behind 5 lives, something like that. But now we're told that the master has a complete, full realization of the past. Quite a difference in the scope there between the angel and the master, even though the angel has to be a more advanced being than any of our human masters. So I'm sure there's a way to explain that. During the preceding cycle of lives of initiatory service to humanity, up-and-coming initiates, as we will be, he has several times heard the voice of the Father, the monad, Sanat Kumara, and this is a symbolic phrase indicating contact with that aspect of himself which was responsible for the appearance of his soul and for its long cycle of incarnation, the monad, okay, the Father, okay. The monad, the spirit, the one, the life, the Father, all of these are synonymous terms, and, from the time of the third initiation on, some conscious contact with the monad is occurring. Onward, some conscious contact with the monad is occurring. And each time that voice spoke, it gave him recognition. He recognizes everything. He's descended, and now as he reascends, he recognizes that through which he has passed through and the wider field of consciousness through which earlier he had descended. As I said, it's not up and down. It's kind of like concretized and enlarged. This is what it means to descend and ascend. It is in reality the voice of the initiator in whom we live and move and have our being. That is Sanat Kumara, as a projection of the planetary logos. See, Sanat Kumara may deliver the fifth initiation, but after that, other beings who are projections of the planetary logos, or with the emphasis on the planetary logoic nature, they are the initiators. A certain existence at the sixth initiation, he doesn't say anything about who or what that is, and then the planetary logos himself at the seventh initiation, but sometimes Sanat Kumara is brought into the picture, and it is Sanat Kumara as the planetary logos, who is the initiator. All of the Master's previous visions have led him to this high point of expectancy. And as we approach the way of higher evolution, now decided upon at the 6th degree, certainly the sense of expectancy is very great. He knows now where his field of service lies, within the hierarchy, working on behalf of all living beings. And, for a time, the Master remains with Sanat Kumara before he may have, towards the 6th initiation, he may register his choice, but he will be retained, we are told, because the emergency is so great, retained here in this expanded field of Earth service, and then later pursue the direction which his choice has indicated. He knows also that he, let's get this. He knows also that he himself has still to make progress, to move forward, that there faces him a great initiation of decision, the 6th, for which he must prepare. I mean, sometimes it is a great negative habit of humanity to look at interim steps as if they were final, to look at interim teachers as if they were the last word, to look at interim religions as if they can be succeeded by nothing better. It is the tendency in the human mind to concretize, and it definitely limits progress. So, I mean, if a planetary logos still has much to accomplish, if a solar logos does, if a cosmic logos does, if a supercosmic logos does, if a galactic logos has still much to accomplish, well then, we cannot talk about any kind of finality with respect to a master. So there is a kind of training that the master has to subject himself to. Sometimes decision in the earlier days could be made at the 5th degree, but that's not the case now. The requirements have risen, and the revelation is the revelation of the 7 or now 9 paths, that of which they consist, and the attractiveness of one of those paths, the correct one, to the master. So he has to prepare for the great initiation of decision. He knows that this entails for him right choice. Obviously, Libra is involved, Saturn's involved, the third ray is involved here at this initiation. But also that right choice depends upon right understanding. So he has to study and learn in a way that much deeper than what we can now, the requirements of these paths. Right perception, right willingness, and right vision or revelation. Right, so if we're going to have right choice is going to depend on right understanding, right perception, right willingness, and right vision or revelation. So he stands again upon the mountaintop. This mountaintop is that of the 5th degree, awaiting again the presence. It is basically that of the extensions of the planetary logos. He realizes that something more is needed if he is to serve rightly and simultaneously making spiritual progress himself. So let's just say this, that always there are new and inviting incentives. And we're never left bored upon the field of solar systemic and cosmic development. Always there's something new, and even if we're a universal logos who has achieved all within a particular universe on all the levels sent forth, there is the invitation of that which lies beyond any universe. That which is when universes are not, and is when universes are too. It is not possible for me here to indicate the nature of the revelation which is accorded to the initiate of the 5th initiation. Now, Master DK has passed through this, and he obviously knows certain things that are very intimate to his own psychology and the way that he can contribute to the expression of the divine plan and purpose. He tells us he can't do this because it is too closely related to Shambhala. And I myself have not myself done more this life than take the 5th initiation and climb the Mount of Ascension. And let's just call it, in my way of thinking, it is the 2nd Mount. Because he does talk about a kind of ascension connected with the 6th degree, and Master DK apparently, at that time anyway, had not taken the 6th degree. I mean, he's done such amazing work that, you kind of think that when he finishes this triple masterpiece in 3 installments given to Blavatsky and through Bailey, and who knows through whom next, whether Bailey or someone else, who knows, or how, that having given all that, he would be ready for Chohanship, because it would have been his masterpiece, you might say. The revelation for me is not completed. That's very interesting, because there is, therefore, okay, how about spelling that? More to do in the program of the fifth initiation than Master DK has yet done. But of course, all of this was written, this part, 70 years ago, roughly, and we don't know. And in any case, my lips are sealed. It just would not be right to give people such as we are, and who have so many preliminary things to fulfill, the kinds of secrets having to do with the revelation of the nature of Shambhala. I can, however, take up 2 points with you which may clarify your vision. He does what he can to bring the light, right? But he is always obedient. And this master, well, I guess they all have it, but we can really learn occult obedience from watching how Master DK comports himself. I can, however, take up 2 points with you which may clarify your vision. I would remind you again that what I am here writing in this last volume of A Treatise on the Seven Rays is written for disciples and initiates. At least he includes the disciples. You know, quite possible that it's really only for initiates in a way. I think it's written for disciples who are treading the path of initiation, which certainly happens in a fuller sense once the third degree is taken. So that's ahead of the majority who will read this, but not so far ahead that understanding cannot follow. Disciples will see some of the significances behind the symbol and will make interpretations according to the point they have attained upon the path. You know, it's not exact and it's not straight knowledge. It's not the revelation of intuition and pure reason. You need to remember that the world of men today is full of those who have taken one or other of the initiations, and that there are great disciples from all the rays working on the physical plane as senior workers for humanity under the hierarchy. Yeah. We do have to remember that though we do not see them on every ray, they are here and they know the plan and they are working to prepare for its manifestation. So just because we have not necessarily met them in person, as it were, there's no reason to doubt that they are here doing their task and that things are in good hands, which doesn't mean, of course, that we can neglect our role in the bringing in of the new age, brought in by human hands and human feet, as the Roerich painting describes. And there will be many more of these initiates and disciples during the next 100 years, and okay, that takes us 30 years ahead to 2049. Well, 32 years. We're discussing here in 2017. Some of these do not know their particular hierarchical status in their physical brains, having deliberately relinquished this knowledge in order to do certain work. It is, I was always interested when he told us that the ones who were conducting the Second World War, or maybe especially the Second World War, were the very same ones who were the leaders in the Great War in Atlantis. Obviously, everything on a higher turn of the spiral, with evil being even more intensified, but its counterpoise the good led through such disciples as Roosevelt and Churchill and so forth. They too have improved and can fight the evil with greater effectiveness. So anyway, there is oftentimes a sacrifice of personal recognition. Who am I? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? But the hierarchical status exists, and DK did talk about trying to awaken some of these people to who they really are so that they could work with greater power and effectiveness. That which I here write is intended during the next 40 years, till 1990, roughly, to find its way into their hands with the deliberate intent of bringing to the surface of their brain consciousness who and what they are in truth. Yeah. Well, then they can work with, as long as they don't allow it to consume them and sort of forget the task that they are committed to doing, as long as they don't allow that to happen, then they will work with greater power. And of course, look, we're already almost 30 years ahead of that cutoff point, 1989. So the masters see and know many things that have developed or have not developed, and how the progress is shaping up. They see a lot more than we can, obviously. This is a part of the program planned by the hierarchy prior to the externalization of the ashrams, the lifting into greater recognition of the workers. Let's call it the empowering of the workers through self-recognition. Okay? Through self-recognition. When we finally awaken to what we are in a realistic manner, can be very useful, as long as we do not allow ourselves to be shocked by all we have not accomplished or inflated by what we think we have accomplished. It's the noble middle path of sustained proportion that is needed. The masters feel that these senior disciples and initiates, being on the spot, meaning very responsible, should soon begin to work with more authority. So when you're working in this field, or whatever field you work, from whence comes your authority? It's not like personal authority. It's not egotistical authority. It is the authority of what one is, and trying to live according to the full expression of what one actually is. And this will, of course, cut through a lot of delay and make more rapid progress possible. This does not mean that they will assert their spiritual identity and claim, yeah, I guess he's always, I'm always a little bit ahead of him, and then he comes and says it in a much better way. This does not mean that they will assert their spiritual identity and claim initiate status. Some people have tried to do this, we know, and by the very assertion have belied the truth of their own assertion. This they could not do on account of their point on the ladder of spiritual evolution. The true initiate never asserts and draws attention to himself as an initiate. Master DK veiled all that until Alice Bailey mistakenly revealed that he was in fact Jual Kul. The Tibetan was Jual Kul. But, the master rolled with the punches and said we can use this as a test, Your reaction to the revelation of who I am will tell me a lot about where you stand. But knowing who they are from the angle of the hierarchy and what is expected of them, that's the whole thing, When we know really what is expected of us, we have something tangible to fulfill. They will strengthen their work and bring in more energy and point the way with greater clarity. Energy, clarity, work. This is what can result. Work, energy, clarity. Their wisdom will be recognized as well as their compassion, but they themselves will recede into the background. They may even appear to be less active outwardly and so be misjudged because, we human beings, we have so little of the true picture, and we so often judge by our very circumscribed consciousness, and we have to be careful about judgment because we are always working from a circumscribed condition in our judgments, and we're judging things that are much bigger than the circumscribed consciousness we possess. So they may even appear to be less active outwardly and so be misjudged, but their spiritual influence will be growing, and they care not what others think about them. They say, what do they say? Let them say. Tough to live by that, but it is important that the opinion of others cannot be too closely followed, but instead the internal rectitude, what one realizes is correct for one to do. They recognize also the mistaken views of the modern religions anent the Christ. Some may even be persecuted in their homes by those they seem to seek to help. Well, I've always looked for that sentence, and basically, when Jesus was saying, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do," this is standard reaction. You try to help, and you are misjudged, and even those you help may doubt or cast aspersions upon your method of helping. So DK was definitely looking ahead here and seeing something about the reaction of the lesser consciousnesses to the greater consciousnesses which seek to help them. None of this will matter to them, provided they survive it, right? Their way is clear, and their term of service is known to them. So these are pretty high initiates, We seem to be talking about, minimally here, initiates of the third degree who are inwardly connected and know in a hierarchical sense what they have to accomplish. The 2 points with which I shall now deal are as follows. Number 1, the part which energy plays in inducing revelation, and number 2, the part the will plays in the revelatory sequence of revelation, interpretation, intention, and will. These are big abstract ideas, but obviously for those who are initiates, at least of some standing, they will be important. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the part that energy plays in inducing revelation, and number 2, the place the will plays in the revelatory sequence: revelation, interpretation, intention, will. These must be looked at from the angle of discipleship and are not to be considered on their face value or in the ordinary manner. Master DK is always telling us that if the words meant exactly what they seem to mean, there would be no need for him to convey them to us, because they would be very simple indeed. They must be approached from the angle of the world of meaning, that is, the world of the soul, and if possible from the world of significances, which is the world of the Triad, which is more general altogether and more planetary altogether. Otherwise, the teaching will be so exoteric that its occult nature will not appear. And, above all, we're being taught the true causes of things, spiritual occultism. So never do we simply look at a superficial and easy interpretation, or at least we don't rest with that. We continue until there is a greater depth. All right, the part which energy plays in inducing revelation. You will get a hint as to what I have to say if you will refer back to an earlier statement from page 534. There you will find the inference that 3 energies are necessary for the initiate to employ if he seeks revelation. No matter what the revelation may be or the status of the disciple or the initiation he faces, the same 3 energies will be brought into play. And they are the energy generated by the disciple, and by that I suppose we mean the soul-infused or infusing personality, the energy coming from the spiritual triad, the energy of the ashram with which he is affiliated. So this would take us up quite high. We would be brought into the higher initiations as well. The 3 energies can be found at initiations, all the initiations up to perhaps the 6th. Okay. Because as a Chohan, he would be the head of an ashram, and there would be energy generated with the ashram, from the ashram that he is guiding. The spiritual triad could remain, if there was the will to have it remain, and the disciple himself in that body of flame, or in the Maya Virupa, or in its phenomenal appearance in the lower 3 worlds, would also be generating an energy even in the high initiations. These are the 3 essential energies, and without their synthesis in the disciple's mind or in one of the 3 higher centers, there can be no true revelation of the higher order or related to the processes of initiation. And according to the monadic ray, let's call it this way, according to the major monadic ray, so will be the particular one of the 3 higher centers utilized. The throat center for ray 3, the heart center for ray 2, and the head center in general for ray 1. Of course, when I say major monadic ray, it may involve a move to the spiritual triad, actually. Okay. In connection with the energy generated by the disciple, it will be obvious that this will include the energy of the soul ray, the soul infusing personality, until the 5th initiation. Note that, when it is superseded by the energy of the monad. And what this means, this is very interesting, the soul ray is significant all the way to the 5th initiation. And I might even say that, well, the energy of the monad is definitely there, but the energy of the spiritual triad is operative still at the fifth initiation, and the atmic abilities of the master continue to increase, and there's always the same secondary triadal ray, always the same major triadal ray. The secondary triadal ray is the same as the soul ray, and the primary triadal ray is the same as one of the monadic rays. I suspect the ray that's found on the monadic plane. Okay, so the energy generated by the disciple, it does include the soul ray, and when we think of ourselves as the disciple and building the antikarana and so forth, we're using a combination of personality ray and soul ray. We could not use the personality ray itself. So notice that the monadic ray, or the monad, becomes influential at the third initiation, but it doesn't completely take over. The soul quality remains. Okay, the soul ray remains influential. And it is, after all, the same as the secondary ray of the spiritual triad. And if we want to see how that might look, we go over here to page 177 of the Treatise on Cosmic Fire. And here we are. And we see primary and secondary triadal emphases. With Atma, we can pretty well include Ray 1, with Buddhi Ray 2, and with Manas Ray 3. And there are other ways also to, we might say that the Atmic soul ray is Ray 1 or 5 or 7, and the Buddhic soul ray, Ray 2, 4, 6, and monastic soul ray, Ray 3, or monastic triadal ray, Ray 3, maybe Ray 7 can be involved in it. There have been some special movements of late, we are told, with the Master R taking a number of his initiates, maybe initiates of the second and third degree, onto the third ray with him when he became the Maha Chohan, and that would be his monadic ray. And of course, the Chohan is directing the ashram from the point of view of his monadic ray. That means, that, well, at least in terms of the sevenfoldness of things, the monadic ray of Master M has to be the first, at least the secondary monadic ray, pertaining to the monadic plane of Master KH the second, of Paul the Venetian the third, of Master Serapis the fourth, of Master Hilarion the fifth, of Master Jesus the sixth, and of the presently unknown seventh ray master, the seventh ray Chohan the seventh, assuming he is a Chohan, directing that. I mean, I think you have to be a Chohan to direct an entire ashram. Well, these are some of the interesting complexities into which the ray science will take us, and right now we look forward to understanding in a certain speculative spirit, later to be confirmed or denied when more information is available. So let's just realize that even though we may be a third degree initiate and the monadic ray may be becoming effective, it doesn't take over entirely immediately. The soul ray remains, and it certainly remains even after the causal body has been destroyed on the Buddhic level. And it remains after the causal body has been destroyed on the atmic level as well. I would say there's probably some rehearsal of the work of Atma before one becomes a true master. And still, let us remember that on the Buddhic plane, the master is primarily focused, even though his number, the number 5, correlates him with the Atmic plane. There he is not completely in control, but he is learning more and more about how to control that level. Okay, so until the 5th initiation, and then after the 5th initiation, on the way to the 6th, it will be superseded by the energy of the monad. And you see, because look, if we say the soul ray, we really mean the secondary triadal ray, and the triadal ray is uniform, as we learn on page 168 and 169 of Esoteric Psychology 1. What a place to find it. You know, I'm grateful to the man who pointed it out to me long ago. Many little hints, many little pieces remain to be included so that they can help to make sense out of an incomplete gestalt, we might say. We almost have the image, but not quite. A pieces or two are missing, and we have to have those pieces for completed understanding. So anyway, even though, let's just say, on the way to the 6th initiation, the energy of the monad is superseding that of the secondary triadal ray, and this is not necessarily to say that that energy of the triad immediately disappears. That secondary energy. Maybe not. But this would involve studying the ray science as it applies to arhats and masters and chohans. So, you know, speculatively, we can hazard some intelligent guesses, but there's no confirmation here for us. This will reach him, first of all, as the energy of the spiritual triad, the monad through the triad, and later that in its own turn will be superseded by direct energy of the monad itself. So what we're saying here is that the spiritual triad conveys monadic energy, but direct monadic energy is still more intense. The initiate will then know practically and not just theoretically what Christ meant when he said, I and my Father are one. I and my monad are one. I am my monad. That is my truer identity, regardless of my extensions, circumscribed emanative extensions in the lower worlds. I think we can realize and imagine that all of this takes some pretty intense introspection and at least awareness of subtle energies and movements within our energy system to move from that which is simply theoretical to that which is more practical. I and my Father are one. Well, we can say that, but if you're not quite a Chohan, I don't know how we can mean it from the perspective of our experience. We are, you know, treading the path of being. The Tibetan says he's an initiate into the state of being. And that should tell us something, meaning he is at least a master. So we are attempting here to still including intelligence and love, move into the area of will and move even beyond the area of will into being which includes them all, includes the triplicity. It's like the point in the triangle. Okay. In the earlier stages of the path of discipleship, the disciple works with that measure of the energy of his soul ray to which he can be receptive, plus as much of the energy of the personality ray as is responsive to that soul ray, which is interesting because there are higher and lower aspects to this personality ray energy, and not all aspects of the personality ray are responsive to soul energy. And you kind of wonder, if you extend the analogy, whether all aspects of the soul ray, all of them, are completely responsive to the monadic ray. Maybe there is also a kind of battle that goes on there, on that higher level, just the way there is between the soul and the personality. So in doing this, a great measure of discrimination can be developed. And it is one of the first places where the value of the injunction, know thyself, can be seen. In other words, at first, the issue is, at first, what is of the personality and what is of the soul. And we examine ourselves, and we try not to be fooled or deceived. We try to be honest and discriminating, and also discerning. It's still a higher step. The nature of the soul ray at this time determines the nature of the revelation. Rays are limitations in a way. There comes a time when the entire 7 rays are considered to be, or to be on any one of them is considered to be a limitation. Of course, great beings are on rays as well, but they include a panoply of all the lesser 7 rays. There's not a planetary logos, for instance, no matter what soul, personality, or monadic ray that logos is on, that is not wielding in some way all the 7 rays on a lesser turn of the spiral. The nature of the soul ray at this time determines the nature of the revelation. We cannot have the revelation on all rays yet, because we are, as we are now, too circumscribed. The nature of the revelation, the nature of the personality and its ray at the same time is at the same time either helpful or a hindrance. I suppose it will depend to a degree on the harmony between the personality ray and the soul ray, or even if they're on different lines like 1, 3, 5, 7 or 2, 4, 6, have they been made to harmonize and work together, because it would not be so that only rays on the same line can work together. Matter of fact, rays on the same line might still have conflict, because the personality sphere is involved with one of the rays and the soul sphere with another, even though they are, from appearances, harmonious rays. Okay. So we are talking about increasing revelation. Revelation is one of the first steps here. This is number 2 in this sequence. Number 2. Right, there it is. Revelation, interpretation, intention, and will. All right. So these 3 factors are involved in many initiatory events. The disciple, even if the disciple is an initiate, the coming in of spiritual triadic energy, which is the personality of the monad, and then the energy of the ashram itself, with which he is affiliated. To the energies which he has generated within himself, and thus emits, we might say, rather than transmits, if we are being completely accurate in our terminology. To the energy which he has generated within himself, the disciple learns to add that of the group which he has attempted to serve with love and understanding. One of the interpretations of that group can be is the ashram. And of course there is also the target group, we might say, which is the beneficiary of the energies directed towards them. All disciples of any standing gather around them the few or the many that have found themselves able to aid. The purity of the energy generated by this group depends upon their selflessness, their freedom from authority or the control of the disciple, and the quality of their spiritual aspiration. So these are three factors: purity, selflessness, and freedom from authority. You can get many groups which have an apparently superior disciple directing everything that those who gather around him may do, and that is not a sign of a really pure group. Okay. So the disciple is magnetic and will gather around him those who respond to his note, those who can help, and if there's going to be a pure energy here, it will depend on three factors: selflessness, freedom from authority, and aspiration. As the disciple of the Master has helped them to generate this energy, and as all will necessarily synchronize with his, it doesn't mean, to synchronize does not mean to be directed, not mean to be directed in every particular. You notice how Master DK offers suggestions rather than commands. Of course, he is a second-ray master, but he has, as we've been told, or he's been telling us something of the first ray in his spiritual triad, and what does that mean? That's interesting. It becomes available as a pure stream of force. This energy of the group gathered around the disciple of the Master. It becomes available as a pure stream of force flowing through him at all times. This he can learn to focus and incorporate with his own energy, also focused, in order to prepare himself for further vision, provided also that his motive is likewise selfless. So, selfless. The group aids and is an augmenting energy, which can also be directed in a stream. Okay. There's so much and so much of depth here that one is inclined to really want to ponder carefully. So it's the disciple and the group, basically, and or the master and the group, and it's the gathering disciple and the gathered group. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so let me put this in here. We are speaking of the energies of the gathering disciple and the gathered group, both of which can be directed. So, you can, as a disciple, a becoming disciple, a becoming initiate, you can look at what's going on around you, and you can say, well, who have I gathered? What is their quality? Are they selfless? Are they free from my authority? Do they have a reasonable quality of spiritual aspiration? These are the things that will reveal whether you are working in the old Piscean manner or in a more, let's call it democratic, Aquarian manner, a more decentralized manner. The second group of energies are those coming to the disciple from the spiritual triad. So first there were the disciple's energies, and now the spiritual triad, which really, let us remember, is the personality, the triune expression of the monad. These are relatively new to him, to the advancing disciple, and embody divine qualities of which he has hitherto known nothing. These are not personal qualities, not personal qualities, but qualities which pertain more to the Logos in whom he lives and moves and has his being. So new to him, really. And they embody divine qualities of which he has hitherto known nothing. It's a frontier, triadal energies, and building the Antikarana leads us to the possibility of crossing that frontier. Even theoretically, he knows little, and his attitude towards them has hitherto been largely speculative. You think outward with reason towards that which you do not know from experience. We're doing a lot of that here, of course. Since he first put his foot upon the path, he has been trying to build the Antikarana, and we might say even by methods which are nowhere near as occult as those given now by Master DK. Even that has meant for him an act of faith. We can't really proceed on this path without faith, because we are touching the substance of things which lie ahead through our faith. It's not just deluding us, it's actually a method of contact. Faith is a method of contact with the unseen and unexperienced. So faith is a method of contact with the unseen and as yet unexperienced. And he proceeds in the early stages with the work of building. Even the early meditative work of contacting the soul on the higher mental plane is part of building the Antikarana, looked at as a larger process, yet scarcely knowing what he does. He follows blindly the ancient rules and attempts to accept as factual that which has not been proven to him to be a fact, but which is testified to by countless thousands. down the ages? Well, it just makes sense, to follow those you trust. And if there are many who have proved themselves, then following is an act of wisdom. The whole process is in the nature of a culminating triumph, of that innate sense of deity which has driven man forward from the most primitive experiences and physical adventures to this great adventure of constructing a pathway for himself from the dense material world into the spiritual. This is a great adventure. Sometimes DK has referred to death as the great adventure. And here is a method of procedure which is releasing and akin to death in some ways, because one can travel in and travel out of confinement. It's a form of liberation, and death is a great liberation also. So this innate sense of divinity or deity has driven us. We find something within ourselves that is powerful and which drives us forward, and which we sense to be, in fact, we have the sense that it is immortal. These higher spiritual energies have hitherto been recognized by him through their effects, and now he has to learn how to handle them, first of all, by letting them pour into and through him via the Antikarana, and then to direct towards the immediate objective of the divine plan. So a more direct relationship is established between the man and the spiritual triad, and a greater flow of triadal energies enters his normal life. So it's a harder job to handle these when they are invoked directly and arrive in a purer form and a more intense form, and maybe arrive in a manner which less respects the cherished prerogatives of the limited personality. It kind of reminds you of that old saying that God, in the form of the spiritual triad or the higher energies, is no respecter of persons, because there are greater plans, and the personhood is simply a limitation and instrument, so it cannot be put as the first priority. And thus the sacrifice, thus the relinquishment, when overpowering energies enter and begin to negate the importance of that which was held and cherished for so many years. We just have to be ready for these events. They will come to all at the right time, which can be, of course, hastened because the time equation is very much in our hands. Hitherto, he has worked primarily with the thread of consciousness. This is anchored in the head. And through that consciousness, his personality and soul are linked together until he has become a soul-infused personality. So we might say that work with the thread of consciousness leads to the stage of soul-infused personality. So he, the man in the lower worlds, becoming ever more refined, has then attained unity with his higher self. It is a stage of quite complete soul infusion. Through the building of the Antikarana, another thread is added to the soul-infused personality, and the true spiritual individual is linked with and comes under the direction of the spiritual triad. Well, the life thread is always active, but to be able to have a more direct relation with the life thread is important, and of course the creative thread will have differences in its effects depending upon the degree of consciousness of the individual. I mean, when we build the link, the antichronic link into the triad, that which we create should be in line with the divine plan, whereas before our creations may have been quite individual, expressing our soul, as it were, or quite personal, expressing something even lesser that has to do with the threefold personality. So we're growing in consciousness all the time. We're becoming a more living being. We're understanding maybe what being actually is, and we develop a higher form of creativity. At the fourth initiation, the soul body, well, this is repeated so often that, one wonders when one passes through it, what will be experienced. And I'm pretty sure that, we'll be able to say, oh, that's what he meant, Right now it remains somewhat speculative, such as our stage of evolution. Through the building of the Antikrana, another thread is added to the soul-infused personality, and that personality becomes capable of creating in a way that is not strictly personal and not even strictly individual, but is more planetary and plan-related. At the fourth initiation, the soul body, the causal body, so-called, disappears. Well, maybe not entirely, but it's certainly quite destroyed, if not yet entirely dispersed. And the thread of consciousness is occultly snapped. It would seem that the ability to move onward in life, as in the onward move in life, the sixth rule of the 14 is brought into expression. And the thread of consciousness is occultly snapped. Neither the soul body nor the thread of consciousness in that way are any more required. Of course, there's a paradox here. The great planetary logo, they certainly have consciousness, so do the solar logos and others, but we're always phasing out the kind of lower consciousness as we phase in a higher kind, and consciousness based on duality is certainly being phased out as the oneness factor becomes livingly appreciated. The soul is no longer the repository of the consciousness aspect as hitherto. In other words, consciousness has a new vibratory level upon which to focus. Consciousness focuses on a new vibratory level. All that the soul has stored up of knowledge, science, wisdom, and experience garnered in the life cycle of many eons of incarnation are now the sole possession of the individual spiritual man. I mean, let's just say all these possessions, all these spiritual possessions, they make their way into the spiritual triad before later being absorbed by the monad. Possessions. Okay. So nothing is lost, really. It's not like the soul body is destroyed and all contents are destroyed. They may be sublimated. Who knows what kind of alchemy is involved in transferring what was stored there into a still higher repository, but into those permanent atoms or into those centers of the higher and now organizing triadal vehicles. These possessions are extracted and placed. It must be a very interesting process, and we can just know the generalities of it. All that the soul has stored up of knowledge, science, wisdom, and experience, garnered in the life cycle of many eons of incarnation, are now the sole possession of the individual spiritual man. And who is that? I mean, really, it's more the triad, more the monad. The soul is temporarily the individual spiritual man, what we normally call the soul. So say what we normally call the soul is only temporarily that which possesses all these acquirements. But nothing is lost. It's all elevated, where it can be used for still higher purposes and still greater power. After all, if you think about it, it's not really from the causal body, from the egoic lotus, that the Maya Varupa is generated. We are not generating the Maya Varupa until after the fourth initiation, and usually the fifth, and the causal body is gone. So from whence do we generate the Maya Varupa? And we might say from the spiritual triad itself. He transfers them into the higher correspondence of the sensory perceptive apparatus, the instinctual nature, on the three planes of the three worlds. The higher correspondence, the cosmic ethers, right? Cosmic ethers, the three cosmic ethers on which the spiritual triad is found located. The three cosmic ethers on which the spiritual triad is located. Well, it seems like all of this lies ahead of us, but maybe not so far. And it's always wise to read the map before actually going exploring in the terrain, if such a map exists. And obviously, in the field of occultism, such a map does exist. Nevertheless, he still possesses awareness of all past events and knows now why he is what he is. Much of the information anent the past he discards. Maybe, it doesn't have to attend to it, it's just a burden, but he extracts from it that which is needed. It has served its purpose, leaving him with the residue of experienced wisdom. So let's say this is this point, is one of the points in time in which wisdom is extracted from accumulated knowledge. This is accumulated knowledge. His life takes on a new coloring, totally unrelated to the three worlds of his past experience. This is the coloring of the spiritual triad. Though there are many points within the triad which on a higher turn of the spiral are related to the past experience. He, the sum of that past, faces new spiritual adventures. It sounds so much like the adventuring Sagittarius mode. In building the Antikarana, Sagittarius is very much involved. It is the adventuring sign, and it shoots the arrow. It's the projective sign, and I wouldn't be surprised that somehow it's very involved in the sixth initiation as well as in the earlier stages of building the Antikarana. One has to shoot the arrow into the new terrain. So he faces a new spiritual adventure and has now to tread the path which leads him away from normal human evolution on the way of the higher evolution. And who knows how long that takes to achieve, but it could be trillions of years, according to the way of measuring time on the subtle levels of the universe. I mean, if you think about it, if our solar system lasts 311 trillion 40 billion years, according to the Brahmanic chronology, then there has to be that much time, roughly, in Pralaya. So, and we're only halfway through, so the appearance of the new solar system lies ahead some 400 and 300 and, okay. Let's see if we have 150, 160, 155, 155, some 466 trillion years ahead. Now, those are vast, they're huge numbers, and they seem to give the lie to the way the timing of our present universe is measured. But usually when it comes to science, we always have too narrow, cramped, and myopic a point of view, and when a greater truth about these time cycles is understood, they generally expand tremendously. Let's remember that, a lot of good people believe that at 4004 BC at 9 o'clock in the morning, the universe was created. We can laugh at it now, but it was believed at that time, and there was not that great lengthy developmental period on the planet which saw the rise of different forms of life taking millions upon millions of years. None of that was understood, and the time in which man presumably had existed was very cramped, just a few thousand years. So generally there's an expansion which is operative once we know more. Master Gurumi told us that we'll have a lot of geological adjustments to make, or adjustments in our interpretation of geology when the truth is known. And that's just one field. The astronomical revelations will be immense, and they are coming, says Master DK. Okay, so he's going to rise out of the normal human evolution, maybe normal human and superhuman, which would take him through the atmic plane and onto, as a monad, because that appears to be what is traveling on this way, onto the way of the higher evolution, and for spans of years that entirely dwarf our expectation. Literally trillions of years, if the Brahmanic chronology is accurate, which HPB says it is, and if we can get some kind of understanding of it. So let's go on. 3 major energies begin to make an impact upon his lower mind. Is he still the master? Or is this an insert? Let's see. No, it's not an insert anymore. three major energies begin to make an impact upon the lower mind. They are: 1, the impulsive energy of ideas coming to him from the abstract mind and traveling along the Antakarana, and these make contact with his now illumined, soul-illumined lower mind, which at this point transforms them into ideals, so that the divine ideas, implementing the divine purpose, may become the heritage of the race of men. This is showing us how ideas descend. Now, sometimes it is said that what we have on the plane of abstract mind is not ideas at all. They have to come from the Buddhic plane. So, do ideas come initially from the Buddhic plane, or does the abstract mind really have ideas, or are they just advanced thoughts? It just depends on what section we read. I mean, certainly the direct, pure reason type of idea, which is it is a non-material, and it strikes of a sudden, and it has to be broken out into the greater thoughts. But let's just say, as he says, there are ideas from the abstract mind which impel. They do descend via the Antakarana. They make contact with the soul-infused mind. And, depending on whether we're talking about here an earlier type of initiate or a master, if there was that lower mind, it would be, probably a unified field, really, as part of the Maya Virupa. The better trained and more controlled the mind, the easier it will be to handle this type of energy. It is by means of this impulsive energy, meaning spurring one to action, that the hierarchy upon the Buddhic plane leads humanity onwards. They send down the great abstract thoughts, which are correlated with intuitions, aspects of pure reason, and they regulate them in time. So, it's the old saying, nothing is more potent than an idea whose time has come, and the masters, knowing the timing of the plan, emphasize these true ideas become abstract thoughts at the right time. So the masters control the timing. But, ultimately, it's still higher beings than themselves that are controlling the timing, because the timing is part of the divine plan. So the impulsive energy of ideas, when it hits a truly illumined mind, can make its way into our life and on the lower planes, and become a divine ideal. Ideas become abstract thoughts, become eventually thoughts on the lower mental plane, and then ideals, all in line with the original Buddhic idea, a purer form of idea. And this doesn't mean that ideas come only from the Buddhic plane. They come from planes still higher. I mean, in a way, everything in the universe is an idea in the mind of the universal logos. Okay, so let's see. What are we looking at here? Three major energies begin to make an impact upon his lower mind. See, we may have wandered away from, strictly speaking, the discussion of the master into a more general discussion about the reception of ideas via the antikarana. So the impulsive energy of ideas, then the energy of the intuition. Well, is he associating that with ideas? Elsewhere he does. The energy of the intuition, which is the word we use to describe a direct contact with the mind of God at some relatively high level of experience. What a wonderful definition, and one that we should remember here, if we can. The energy of intuition, which is the word, intuition is the word we use to describe a direct contact with the mind of God at some relatively high level of experience. So we're not talking now about speculation and reason. We're talking about that which is in the mind of God. Transcendental mind contacts this mind of God. This is far beyond speculation, but is real in the let's see, real in the mind of God. The effect of this energy upon the soul-infused personality is to give the mind, already receptive to the energy of ideas, and I guess he's using ideas in a certain way here. Other times he discriminates between abstract thoughts and ideas, but in this particular case, he's using the word ideas to correspond with these abstract thoughts through which the hierarchy controls the development in the human race. So the effect of this energy of intuition, especially the fourth level of the Buddhic plane, if we're high enough to receive that, the effect of this energy upon the soul-infused personality is to give to the mind, already receptive to the energy of ideas, some faint glimmering and brief revelation of the purpose of the ideas which underlie all hierarchical activity on behalf of humanity. Well, let's just put it like this. 4 is related to 2, and Buddhi to the monadic level, where a formulation of divine purpose can be found. Now, I'm sure there's divine purpose on the first or logoic plane, but we really hear about it for the first time as we leave the worlds of Brahma and enter the world of Vishnu, which is the second cosmic subplane, or the second or the sixth cosmic subplane, depending on how you count from above or from below. So purpose comes into play here, and some glimmering, just a glimmering, really, just a glimmering of purpose. No established understanding of it, because even the divine plan to carry out the purpose is not completely yet understood. The intuition is entirely concerned with group activity. It's not just the psychic hunch, as he tells us. It is never interested in, can intuition have an interest? Interesting. It is never interested in or directed to the revelation of anything concerned with the personality life. And this is, again, one of those golden statements, which is highly discriminative in nature and will help us discern whether what we are having or what someone is having is a real intuition, or whether it's simply a kind of a psychic illumination related to the personality life. We use words with such inexactitude. And if we try to use them with exactitude, we may become tedious to those with whom we are speaking. So anyway, it's always the group activity. If and we might almost say that divine purpose concerns also group activity. It's higher than intuition even. I think many of these things are found in higher correspondences on the higher planes. It's not that when we reach the Buddhic plane we receive the last word regarding intuition. There's cosmic Buddhi and supercosmic Buddhi and on, things beyond our ken entirely, but having a kind of correspondence, higher correspondence with what we find here below. The growth of what we might call the Buddhic vehicle, though that is a misnomer, maybe it's not a vehicle at all. See, in such little statements come the hints. Okay, so maybe we are not talking about a vehicle, but something else. He does talk to us about the coordination of the Buddhic vehicle after the third initiation, but these words, which seem periodically to frustrate the Tibetan, are not universally useful when describing these kinds of processes. So the growth of what you might call the Buddhic vehicle prepares the man for the 9th or the final initiation from 4 to 9. Interesting. But it grows during mastership, during chohanship, and so forth. This Buddhic vehicle continues to this Buddhic vehicle continues to grow and become more powerful and accurate. I mean, obviously we say that Christ is speaking through intuition when he knows what is in man. He, at the time being a coming initiate of the 6th degree, certainly availed himself of the intuition. So this growth of the Buddhic vehicle prepares a man for the final initiation, at least with regard to our cosmic physical plane. Initiations go on and on and on, obviously, until we re-become the very source from which we emanated. The final initiation, which enables the initiate in a manner incomprehensible to us to intuit in a blazing light the true nature of the cosmic astral plane, we might say, before establishing residence there. Residence. Well, I think there may be the ability, my impression so far is that there's the ability to receive from the cosmic astral plane at the 7th degree, the ability to go there now and then at the 8th degree, and the relinquishment of any kind of residence upon the cosmic physical plane and an establishing of residence upon the cosmic astral plane at the 9th initiation. Forget not the Buddhic plane is closely allied with the cosmic astral plane, as would be the monadic plane, and that all intuitions, when regulated, require the use of the creative imagination in their working out or in their presentation to the thoughts of men. So our own astral plane is there, and maybe the higher correspondence to imagination is found on the cosmic astral plane. We might say this, a kind of higher correspondence of imagination is perhaps found on the cosmic astral plane. I mean, we don't really know the nature of the cosmic phenomena there to be found. And as the Tibetan says, look, I haven't been there. I know not. He is speaking according to what he knows from the teaching, and speculatively, I suppose, on his own high level. Speaking generally, the masters intuit those phases of the divine intention which are immediate, and these constitute the overshadowing cloud of noble things. Intuition brings in that which is immediately useful, and not necessarily that which lies really very far ahead. But there is a point at which the cosmic astral plane, of which we really at present, such as we are, know nothing, its purpose, let's just say, and it's something of its nature can be intuited in a blazing light. When would this be? When would this occur? Seventh initiation? Eighth? Well, so speaking generally, the masters intuit those phases which are immediate. These constitute the overshadowing cloud of knowable things. These they transform into the plan. The custodians of the plan intuit and formulate. The custodians of the plan, high masters, intuit and then transform the received intuitions into the process of the divine plan. Then their disciples, with their intuitional capacity developing slowly but steadily, begin themselves to intuit these ideas, and they're coming from very high places, you see. Now we're not just talking about the abstract mind. Now we're talking about ideas that lie beyond this lower level of the Triad. And then we are reminded that the atmic plane is the third plane, and the third level of the spiritual triad, the abstract mind, must be a numerical correspondence between it and the atmic plane, considering the atmic plane in its relationship to intelligence, and not so much just the will. Then their disciples, with their intuitional capacity developing slowly but steadily, begin themselves to intuit these ideas, to present them as ideals to the masses, that which is desirable. Ideals, let's call them desirable objectives. Okay. To the masses, and thus precipitate the needed aspects of the plan onto the physical plane. So we do have our place in this chain of descent of the intuited purpose, reflecting itself as a divine plan and presented as abstract thoughts, ideas as abstract thoughts, to the intuiting mind of the disciple who presents them to the masses as highly desirable objectives. I suppose maybe we're in that particular place. There's a lot of people that need to be motivated. We are fairly sure of certain things which will alter their worldview in a positive manner, and we have to present this vision, the presentation of the vision. It's a very Ray 2, Ray 6 thing. we have to present such a vision to those who can be motivated to follow that vision and to arrange their lives as if the vision were real. Well, there's so much to ponder on here. The Master's intuition, divine intention, is very specific. So, the intuition, to be practical, is used to determine what's coming down next, as it were. There's all kinds of things which eventually will come down, but the Master's, being very practical about time and space and subject to the larger cosmic law of economy, will try to bring through what is next intended, divine intention, to be materialized. And there's the sense of time connected with the intuition, not necessarily rambling all over the universe. Interesting speculations, of course, but being practical about what must next appear from the overshadowing cloud of noble things, or maybe from the rain cloud of unknowable things, certainly unknowable to us, but the Masters present them in such a way that they become knowable. So the idea here is that intuition continues to grow and become deeper and more expansive, more revelatory after the fourth initiation. It's not the end of the matter that numerical correspondence between the intuition and the Buddhic plane does not signal the end of the growth of the intuition, which is used continuously and increasingly by initiates higher than the fourth degree. Okay, now we move on to what's called the dynamic energy of the will. And let's see, just remind ourselves here what we are studying. Three major energies begin to make an impact excuse me, upon his lower mind. So that he has a lower mind at all, is it the Master, or is it the high initiate, or is it the lower mind in a Mayavarupic presentation? See, basically I have a feeling that once the causal body is gone, the mental field is united as a whole for those who are building the Mayavarupa. So the impulsive energy of ideas, which are really abstract thoughts as used in this context, the energy of the intuition, and with this brilliant definition about contact with the mind of God at some relatively high level of experience, and the discrimination between what intuition is and what the psychic hunch may be, more personal, and how inexactly we use these terms. And now we're on to this question of the will. The dynamic energy of the will follows next, and as the disciple perfects the Antikarana, completes it, or at least this phase of it, it sweeps through the medium of contact into the mind of the soul-infused personality, and from thence it finds its way into the brain. So basically, in this building process, he's telling us the higher we go, the lower we go. I am, of course, referring to the disciple in training. There are so many types of disciples, right? And not to the masters themselves who work at the center of these energies. Although, when you think about the spiritual triad, the permanent atoms on the Buddhic and Atmic plane are inaccessible in certain ways to masters of the fifth degree because they concern cities, powers, which are pertinent to the Chohan of the sixth and seventh degree. The hierarchy is a great reception point for these three aspects of the spiritual triad: the spiritual will, the intuition or pure reason, and the abstract mind. Basically, what he's doing is discussing hierarchy in relation to these three potencies. And that's what we have been looking at. The abstract mind with its ideas, the intuition, perceiving things in a sudden flash, and now the will related particularly to the atmic plane, and yet the monad is the repository of all of these. It is in the ashrams of the masters that the disciple comes into direct relation with these dynamic, revealing, and impulsive energies, and basically you can see how he divides these words. Dynamic relates to the spiritual will, and revealing to the intuition, and impulsive energies to the descending ideas which are abstract thoughts and which spur to action the disciple in the lower worlds. So in the ashrams, we may think we know something about this beforehand, but it is only when we're really in the ashram and only when we're really building the Antakarana that spiritual will, spiritual intuition, well, maybe there's no other kind, and impulsive energy of ideas, really abstract thoughts, are contacted in a purer form. These three energies focus through and are directed by the three heads of the hierarchy: the Manu, the Christ, and the Maha Chohan. Manu, dynamic spiritual will; the Christ, the revealing intuition; the Maha Chohan, the impulsive energies of ideas or abstract thoughts. The Manu is receptive to and the agent of the energy of the divine will for humanity. I mean, there's the divine will for all kinds of greater beings. So we have to specify here that we're talking about the divine will for humanity, a certain aspect of the divine will. The Christ is the agent for the distribution of the energy which brings intuitive revelation. It grasps many things simultaneously, and the Maha Chohan is responsible for the inflow of ideas, considered as abstract thoughts, into the consciousness of the disciple, the aspirant, and the intelligentsia. So these are three important functions related to the three great lords. Okay, and I'll just kind of highlight them there. I think a lot of us are trying to really break into what the intuition is and how it can perhaps give many, or the seed of many abstract thoughts, or in this context, ideas, simultaneously. Then they have to be broken out in time and space, but one can receive the whole package simultaneously. I would beg you to remember that the main effort of the spiritual hierarchy is on behalf of humanity, because the fourth kingdom in nature, that's us, is the macrocosm of the threefold microcosm of the three lower kingdoms in nature. So we might say that by assuring the correct orientation of humanity, the right development of the three lower kingdoms is assured. So they're working with the human race as the macrocosm here of the three lower kingdoms. The whole subject is too vast to be entered into here, but I've given you much along these lines in a treatise on cosmic fire, indeed, and very often very technical language. It's a book written on the third ray, we are told, and on the first ray. First and third ray, not so much the second ray. Much more than I can possibly give you is revealed to the initiate at the time of the fifth initiation. Well, we are shown that which we can use. We're not given all of universal wisdom. We could never contain it, nor could our planetary logos, nor could our solar logos. And I think nor could a logos of a galactic arm or a logos of a galaxy contain the entirety. So it's proportional giving. We have to give so as to offer the possibility of constructive growth, and not give in such a way that overwhelms. It's a lesson. The clues, the thoughts, the abstract concepts, the fleeting ideas of which all disciples are aware, are at this initiation resolved into certainty. So let's just say there's an illumination. Let's say that so much that is uncertain before this point is at last ascertained. And the Master can now take his place as a distributor of triadal energy. Let's just say he had been learning to do this. Maybe he's not yet a distributor of total monadic energy, but he's worked his way to the fifth level and has some kind of ability to distribute divine will. The major problem confronting him is not the distribution of ideas or the use of the intuition in grasping the stage of the divine purpose at any particular time, and that's very important. The intuition is used in the grasping of divine purpose at any particular time. It is revelatory of the next step ahead, but rather it consists in the development of the spiritual will. That's what a master has to do in its comprehension and its use in world service, just as the disciple has to learn to use the mind in two ways, and that relates to Scorpio, the use of mind in two ways, as a common sense, a resolver of information so that a life pattern and a life service planned and directed may eventuate, and a perception of relationships, and also a searchlight bringing into the light those ideas and intuitions which are needed. Necessity has to do with timing, right? Okay, whoop. So necessity involves right timing. When we studied the nature of illusion, one of them is the appropriation of an idea whose time has not come, an idea which cannot be applied in the present moment, and overemphasizing that particular idea and therefore not really helping with the task immediately at hand. So the master has to learn the uses of the will. A natural sequence can be seen closely related to the idea of revelation. So there's a practical mind that has to do with concretion. There's the intuitive mind reaching upward towards ideas and intuitions which are immediately needed. The disciple is learning these things, but the master has to learn the uses of will. Now, let's just say if a master is learning the use of the spiritual will, we had best be careful when we talk about how easily we might use such a will. Because really, DK has said that we, the average disciple, know practically nothing about the will, and the master is really learning this upon the atmic plane on his way to the sixth initiation. So achieving mastership is not just the end of learning spiritual will. In some ways, it's a beginning. A natural sequence can be closely related to the idea of revelation. What does it say? On the mountaintop of Ascension, following the experience of teaching the spirits which are imprisoned, again it sounds like in the lower three worlds, the master receives a revelation that is his right and due, and something for which the long previous cycle of initiation has prepared him. The revelation, of course, mastership, is the initiation of revelation. The revelation must be followed by realization and recognition. And, DK gives us these mnemonics to help us fix them in our mind. Yeah. He realizes that the right interpretation of the revelation is the first essential. Because I suppose there have been many spiritually inclined in the course of history who have received some extraordinary impression, but then continue in an illusory manner, based upon their present mental limitations, to interpret it incorrectly. He then comes, number two, to the understanding that the next step is for him to formulate his intention based upon the revelation and directed towards his world's service. Intention, will, purpose, or intention, purpose, will. Depends how we want to list them. It's not so much a question of being correct in the listing, but in having the experience. Number three, having received the revelation, interpreted it, and determined within himself what he intends to do, his intention. intention. He next realizes that the factor of the will must now be employed if he and those he seeks to help are to profit from the revelation. Now, all of these are steps which the master passes through. Interpretation, formulation, intention, and will. And there are other steps here as well. These are just the ones that seem to be standing out at this particular point. Remember that the master, above all, is helping Sanat Kumara, seeks to be helpful in a way for which he is very much equipped, and maybe his helpfulness working with Sanat Kumara, not yet having necessarily chosen the path of earth service, which can extend a long time, will tell him something about the path which he must choose at the sixth initiation. I think between the fifth and sixth, a long time can pass while the disciple, who is the master, is working for Sanat Kumara, carrying out a specific intention in a way which is really helpful to humanity and advancing the divine plan. So interpretation and formulation and realization is here too, and will. Revelation, interpret and determine within himself. So there's intention here on this level, intention, realization, and will. And maybe I could add these here. What I think I've... Okay. Interpretation, formulation, intention, realization, and will. Okay. So this opens up the whole subject of the will, its nature and relationships, and this we must study for a while. And the sequence of revelation, interpretation, intention, and will. DK does not put in the stage of realization in this sequence, but it is necessary if the will is to be rightly applied, because intelligence must be utilized, if the will is to be properly applied. Okay, now we still have a fair amount to go in order to finish this work, but it's so deep that I think there might be some benefit in not attempting the entire thing right now, but in doing this second section on the will next and later. Okay. It might be just a bit of overkill here to attempt to do it all right now. I personally might not survive it. So anyway, let's call this the end of Raised and Initiation's webinar commentary. number 97. We've gone from pages 703 to 714, and the next program will be shorter. And our date here is the 15th, 15th of November, 17, and then beginning of Raised and Initiation Webinar Commentary, number 98, pages 714 to 717. And then we'll be into the 6th initiation. Well, look, this is the last book he wrote in the second installment of Presented Teachings. It's obviously, in a way, written for initiates. It's very abstruse, but we gain nothing by refusing to expose ourselves to difficult material. And we may gain much through this exposure, and especially through repeated processing of it and repeated application. DK said to one of his disciples, RSU, that in your causal body are stored the words of many, many books that you've read, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is a good supply which can be worked out now in service to others. And we have no idea what will stick within our causal body when we're reading these things, or when it will be able to be drawn forth. For instance, I'm oftentimes reading. I don't know the section I'm necessarily in, and an idea comes to me. And sure enough, that idea is related to the context in which I'm reading, because I've read it before and it has stuck. The real test, of course, is to apply what is read to our life of discipleship and to some level of humanity which needs to move forward, and for whom the expression of the teaching in an understandable way can help this forward movement. So let's work then on getting this ready for your use, and while the hour is late, I'll see if I possibly can go on tonight. I'm not anticipating anything in that regard. Let's just see. Okay, thank you. We're moving ahead, and there's quite a bit of Master DK's teaching which can be understood, I think, more or less at face value, but so much is abstruse and requires some kind of access to abstract ideas and to pure reason and intuition, and if we want to make it practical, to the spiritual will. So forward we go. See you soon.